semester, you will be getting a program called Beyond Labs. This program allows you to download a virtual reality type program where you can play around with labs. So you'll download the program, and within 2 days you'll put in your license to keep it activated, and so you just need to pay for that. There are worksheets available for you to play around with it, but the information for your labs will be in your ELN. So you'll put in your activation code, and once you've done that and you've saved the program, it won't close off on you. So to get started, you will open the lab, and we'll be doing organic chemistry, but you actually have access to any of the labs if you want to play around. So for instance, physics and general chemistry, biology, etc. are also in there. So to run your experiments or to do TLCs or anything like that, just follow the instructions that you're given. So for instance, I'm going to do a TLC, and I'm going to put 2 different compounds in here. And so you'll notice every time I add something, it shows up on this blackboard. So if I hover over the round bottom flask, you'll see everything. Then when I'm done adding what I want to add, I move it to the stir plate. And then I grab this jar, this is where my TLC plates are, and I'll move them over, and I'll see 2 spots. So if you're doing a reaction, the 2 spots actually imply what's going on in your reaction, but here that's what we're doing. So if I wanted to try something else, I just move over into the trash and it will discard everything and we'll start again, and I can add things. So let's say I wanted to do a reaction, it would be the same thing. I can either click and move and drag to the round bottom flask, or I can double click on it and it will also go into the round bottom flask. Once I'm done adding the reagents that are in the stockroom, I can move it over. I can check TLC. So here is an example where I added 2 things that will show up on TLC. Not everything shows up on TLC. And so I can monitor reactions this way. There's a clock, there's all sorts of instruments that you can see. There are reagents that are on here. So let's say, like I said, we wanted to do a reaction. If you go back to the original menu, there are different types of reactions, and it will give you different tools for you to be able to do these reactions. So for instance, I wanted to do a specific type of reaction that I add whatever starting materials that I want. And then when I'm done, I can add my solvents. But if you scroll over again, you'll see what things are in your flask. Move it over, and then I can add whatever reagents that I want. If it's the wrong experiment, it's not going to let you put any of those reagents. So it's just as a safety measure, just like if you're in the actual physical lab, these reagents won't be available to you. But in this lab, they are. We have buttons for turning on stir plates, we have things for time, but you can see I still haven't added the reagents that I need for this experiment. In here, nothing's happening because I chose a specific experiment, but I'm not putting the right reagents. So I'm going to start again just to show you one more time. So I can add whatever reagents I can add, or I can double click. I can add solvents, and I can double click or add. These are liquids, but sometimes they're solids, and instead of a syringe, it will look like a spatula or a scoopula. And then in this case, I'm doing a bromination reaction, and a bromination reaction will add bromine, which is a brownish reddish color. And so as soon as I've added it, I haven't quite added it, I'm just hovering at this point, you'll see the reaction actually become a particular color, and it will say bromine here. And so this is what you see. It's kind of this reddish brown color. It now says bromine. Every time I do a reaction that requires heat, I'm going to put the condenser on. I'm going to put the nitrogen gas in our lab because we're not making everything tight. We don't necessarily need the nitrogen gas all the time, but we can see we have the spot of the starting alkene, and I can change the time of the reaction. You might see a color change depending on the reaction, but I haven't turned the stir plate on or the heat, so nothing's going to happen. So that's why I showed you 2 different TLCs, nothing happened. But notice I advanced the time. You don't have to sit and wait for the time to change yourself. You can advance the time so you don't have to sit there forever like you would in a real lab. And you notice that this is what I started with, and now this is what it looks like. And I see that I have my solvent still left in there, and then I have this other compound that was made. And so you can actually monitor reactions, know what you made. It will tell you what you've made, so it's a little simpler than guessing. And then we can purify it and extract it. So I can just grab my separatory funnel and put it next to it. I can then separate that, so you don't get the true experience of the actual separation method, but that's the idea. We get our, when we're done, we get our product. And then we can do different methods to get our data. So I can do IR, I can do melting point, I can do NMR, and so we just click on the buttons to be able to do that. For NMR, you're going to need to grab NMR tube. For melting point, you're going to need the melting point setup, IR, etc. So you'll see that there is different functionalities in here. Your instructions will give you a little bit more, and then there will be an included document that will have more on how to get started, and you should try to do that. Also, you have a notebook and some other accessories in here. In your notebook, you can save things virtually in here and then copy it out later. But that's basically the gist of it. There are tutorials, etc. for this.